Much of the time when Noan Lingden was teaching me, I felt like a sausage skin being filled with the ingredients of sausage. You know, propaganda, somebody being propagandized, because he repeated something so many times. But by taking on the challenge of my being able to actively say them when he would begin to say something, oh, can I say this? You know, to myself, a little faster than he can say it. Then I internalize them as I would not have been able to otherwise. And then I wasn't satisfied with doing this once. Then every time he began saying it, or just about every time, I would do that. And that's why sometimes when I try to relate these teachings to others, I have to translate it from Tibetan. My advantage. So I encourage you to do likewise. Rather than sit there bored when I repeat something and you say, oh, I've heard that before. As one of my friends in Sanskrit class at the University of Wisconsin used to say, I have that in my notes. It was my great fortune that Noan Lingden realized that the value of repetition. So, I have some hesitation to just read to you what is here on where it says 7/25/2017. You know, when realized you go into, and also nowadays I'm being more literal, you go into, you see these are like pathways. I don't want to call them paths, but and when not realized, you go into mistake. Germano translates mistake as stray. You go into straying. But that suggests in a way you stray from knowledge, but you don't have knowledge. But I'm not disagreeing with his translation. You understand me in general, that I don't, I'm not making a case for every single way that I translate terms. Adventitious generally in the English language means uncaused. But here, as in Gelugpa, it doesn't mean uncaused. It means it's not in the warp and woof of reality, but is caused by superficial factors. The superficial factor, according to Nyingma here, is whether there is fluctuation or not. when there's fluctuation, then you get either realization or non-realization. I think we're almost talking here about a mythic state. A mythic state when there's no fluctuation. And either earlier or we're about, or Mipam-gya-tsho is about to talk about, either he's already talked about it, or he's about to talk about where does the fluctuation come from? It comes from karma, karmic winds. And it's like wind on the ocean. When the ocean is calm, you just have water, as Khetsun Sangpo is going to say. You just have the calm ocean. But when the wind comes, then you get waves. Just so with karmic winds, you get movement. Now this is quite like the talk in Guya Samaja, whether in Geluk or in Nyingma, about the coarser winds which lead to, in the backwards movement, you get the coarser levels of mind. You get the mind of black near attainment. And then you get the mind of vivid redness or orange or red near attainment. And then going backwards more, you get the coarsening. The coarser level of wind, you get the mind of white, like moonlight, but it's not as if you have the moon shining somewhere. Quite often when people are dying, there's a sense of something shining in the distance. This is not like that. The something shining in the distance is extremely coarse. This is a case of shining, white shiningness everywhere. White shiningness everywhere. And it's not as if you have a body somewhere looking at the shiningness. The shining, you have no body. And the shiningness is absolutely, white shiningness is absolutely everywhere. Just as prior to that, you had an orange or red shiningness. Orange, I'm laughing because in the smoke of Vancouver nowadays, there's a very red sun.
Oh, yes.
It's like the end of the world. But it's not like that. There's a red or orange shining everywhere. Your consciousness itself is shining everywhere. And on a more, believe it or not, more subtle level, there is a blackness everywhere. And what's interesting, in that subtle level, there's a thick, which is interesting that it goes thick blackness, which then is cleared away to the fundamental innate mind of clear light, the very, very subtle mind of clear light. So in working backwards, then there's the on the coarser level, which if you were experiencing it, you wouldn't think it was coarse at all. The white mind, the vivid. I used to translate the word vivid as radiant, but radiant suggests shining to somewhere, whereas this is just vivid in and of itself. I forget why I'm talking about this.
Because we were talking about fluctuation.
Yes, fluctuation. So stirred by karmic winds. So this Mipam talks about it this in terms of time. He talks about it in terms of time, but I take it, and I believe also Mipam takes it in terms of current experience. It works two ways, I believe, in terms of mythic time and in terms of current experience. Why? And I'm leaping forward to the material that I put in the email. This is compared to meditative equipoise in which you're directly perceiving emptiness, which Nguyen Langdon used to talk about so frequently. He used to talk about the mind directly realizing emptiness and the emptiness that's directly being realized as like water in water. And as I've mentioned before in talking with this group, he used to speak about it because he was a performer. He used to make it more substantial, talking about 2 glasses of water, of fresh water, poured into one bowl. Whereas in the text, it just talks about water in water. So he made it more substantial. 2 glasses of fresh water poured together, in other words, mixed, in one bowl, such that you couldn't tell the difference between the mind directly realizing emptiness and emptiness. This is geluk, and the emptiness that's being directly realized. So this metaphor, in geluk, this metaphor, he would repeatedly tell me this story so that I would imagine it. I would imagine emptiness, this absence of inherent existence, and emptiness, my consciousness realizing it, as having come together as, what can we say, one thing. Not one impermanent thing, but in Geluk we're constantly talking about pristine wisdom as being impermanent and emptiness as being a mere absence and permanent. And these two somehow come together as one. One that's beyond one. One in which there's no two. One in which there's no two is not even one. So he repeatedly told me this. It was very helpful. Repeatedly took me into this story. And because I'm an imaginer, I liked imagining this. So now also, here we talking about ocean, wind, waves, and there's a lot of talk about time, primordial. What's that other word?
Primeval.
Primeval. Ye tok. Ye means primordial. Tok means beginning. Primeval, pre-original, original, words like this. And even in Nyingma, the great shock for most of my friends anyway, who have studied and practiced Buddhism, where you think there's no beginning. The circle. No beginning to a circle. The real shock in Nyingma is that there's a beginning. And you know, and then Lotus Sutra. There's some, you know, they make it. They talk about it like in Japan, in some, at least in some circles. It's so far back in time. It's almost like there's no beginning, but there is a beginning. Way, 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 way back. And they don't say it, but the way they talk about it is, well, you may as well think of it as no beginning. They don't say that, though. There is a beginning. And you think, Buddhism, beginning? Buddhism is so varied that, you know, it's like, eventually you'll find what you thought you'd never find. It's almost scary that way. As Anne Klein said, the fortune that we have, and we who adopted, you know, not from childhood, is we can pick and choose what we're going to follow. Like a cafeteria, you know? I'm not going to take, you know, in Canada there's poutine. It's a product, very big favorite in Canada. It's sort of like some kind of gravy. I'm not going to take poutine. Or, oh, I love poutine. I'm going to take poutine. And there's some other thing in the cafeteria you should never take. You know, like you go to the South in America and candied sweet potatoes. You say, oh shit, sweet potatoes are sweet enough. Do you have to load them with sugar? You know, and you just pass by that one, and you say, I'm not going to take that one. Or if you're not into the scary protector deities in Tibet, don't bother me with that. Well, one thing I'm sorry about in my 5 trips to Tibet, I should have paid attention to the miraculous things in the temples. You know, it really would have kept me alive to use my video camera, and when it came to somebody telling me about, oh, this statue used to be over here, but the statue jumped to over here. And, you know, I take note of it, sort of, you know. Oh, that's real cute. And the person, it wouldn't be, you know, it was a real faithful Tibetan person who was telling me. It would say it got too smoky from the incense here, and the statue jumped to over here. And I think, okay. And I think, don't tell me too many of these stories. And and you'd go up to the debating courtyard in a certain place, and the stones would be very, you know, they were like this. And somebody would say, well, they rained down from somewhere. And you think, oh, shit, don't tell me a story like that. This is where they're debating philosophy. And, but it, you know, if I had the attitude of, you know, I'll collect all these stories, because, you know, they're really, you know, they're all part and parcel of it. Why not? It would have, you know, instead of getting tired, you know, like, oh, there's one more. It would have been fun, because, you know, all these people are going there. They're all going. You know, you can get some. What?
Jeffrey, the notion of beginning is shocking because that implies the need of a creator God, and it just takes down the whole...
No, it's just I'm so used to it. You know, I don't know if I bought in necessarily. You know, it's real neat. After, you know, I can even make jokes about it. You know, there's no beginning. That's convenient. I even make jokes about it. Some people like to have a beginning. There's some big creature who decides this is the beginning of the world. And some people are convenient with, well, there was always something going on. And the system I'm following has got, well, it's always been going on somewhere. Yeah. Anyway, this mythic one is, the point I want to make is not just time. This mythic version works, at least on this yogi's mind, as when I wake up in the morning, there's that mythic one works on my how I view the present. In other words, there's a time when the mind wakes, in my imagination, before the winds, as I imagine, I think, oh, what would this be like before the winds stir? So I'm led to want to investigate in my own mind what it's like before the winds stir. So the mythic also works in the yogi's mind to order the present. And I see this in how Khetsun Sangpo talks, how he sets up his own present, and how Mipam-gya-tsho talks about the yoga of meditative equipoise. His example comes from meditative equipoise directly realizing emptiness, which is something the yogi does now. And that comes at the end of this chapter. So the myth of time, the time when there was no appearance, doesn't just have to do with, when you think about it, is there any time when there wasn't appearance in terms of us? In one way, you'd logically have to say no. But in terms of a meditative equipoise, that's what we're moving toward. And in terms of deep sleep, we go into this every day. And in terms of the end of dreams, we go into this every time we stop dreaming, every time a dream stops. And in terms of when we wake up, this is all part of Buddhist psychology. And in terms of what we're being told our mind is capable of, I think it's this is intended to draw us into thinking about the stages of appearance, the stages of everyday events of appearance. So, I think you already may have seen this as talking about the stages of appearance. And actually, I don't want to interfere with your taking it that way. But I want to add that there is a story, a myth, a report of actual fact about the early universe that's going on here too. Although I don't think that's laid out in great detail in this book. But if you look into Samantabhadra, if you care to, you'll find it talked about somewhere. Okay. So, the mover is karmic wind. Now I wonder if, does it have to be karmic wind? If a Buddha's complete enjoyment body and emanation bodies appear out of this projective prowess or dynamism of the basis, then do we want to say that that's karmic wind? I don't think so. In Gelug terms, it would be through the force of the collections of merit. I don't know if in Nyingma we want to say that. But anyway, maybe I want to pose that question, and maybe down the road we'll see exactly what's said. So with such, at the end of until the division into cyclic existence and nirvana regarding basal appearances, without such stirring, there are no appearances of cyclic existence in nirvana. Both do not exist, he says. So you see, in the basal state, if we imagine this for ourselves, there's a basal state that's, do we want to call it that's beyond cyclic existence, or that is underneath, that's prior to cyclic existence in nirvana? With such stirring, both cyclic existence and nirvana arise adventitiously. So, you see, the stirring is a condition for cyclic existence and nirvana to arise. But because cyclic existence are not there in the basal structure, that means cyclic existence and nirvana are adventitious, not in the warp and woof of the basal structure. Now, Mipam Gyatsho, I think, is a bit stricter than Khetsun Sangpo, because he's saying, in this paragraph, now he says, in terms of the entity of the primeval basic mode of abiding, that is not adventitiously differentiated into either cyclic existence or nirvana. This just plain isn't a topic for us to bother about, to wonder about whether the 10 powers of a Buddha exist manifestly or not, or for bother about whether all the marks, beauties, these are the 32 marks and the 80 beauties. Remember, almost everybody calls the beauties the 80 minor marks, but as Geshe Wangyal said, there's nothing minor about anything in a Buddha. And in fact, when you look into the Sanskrit and Tibetan terms, there's no word minor. This has come out of a long tradition of translation into English. I don't know about Chinese. It's not there in the Tibetan. It just plain isn't there. So, being the bold person I am, I don't care if it's been mistranslated all along. I'm not going to take that train. If there's another train, and I'll lay the tracks. The tracks are very easily laid. All you have to do is imagine them. And, look at the Sanskrit, look at the Tibetan. And I chose beauties. 80 beauties. And, I had to translate all 80 of them. There's no reason not to call them beauties. Purely.
In Chinese, the 80, the beauties is translated as 80 favorable marks.
Oh, great. So I've got the 32 marks and 80 favorable marks. All right.
Yes.
So beauties is fine. Pure Land. And so forth of a complete enjoyment body are fully present. Now he says fully present, manifestly present. Now is he hinting that they're non-manifestly present? And present but not fully present, half present, non-manifestly present. Now, you see, by my former rules of whether I would repeat or not, most of this didn't get repeated when I translated Khetsun Sangpo. But by my new outlook, I'm willing to say both cyclic existence and nirvana, that was in there, but or state of mistake and state of release. So it got repeated. So, you see, even am I going to say out loud what you can read? By the example of Jan Langdon, I have to be willing to repeat it. How old was he when he died? I'm older than he was. My God, you're testing the powers of my voice. Basal appearances from within that basis. They have to take place by way of basal appearances. That means what? Something has to stir. And therefore, in the primeval basic mode of abiding itself, these are not differentiated. Are they a mess? Are these, are they like a blender? What are they like? When you're direct, in Geluk or in Nyingma, when you're directly realizing emptiness, what are all these things like? When you directly realize the emptiness of all phenomena, what are all phenomena like? Are they like a blender? They're sort of like a mess. Can you drink them all at that time? Because you don't know all phenomena when you realize, that's why in that last paragraph it says, a learner's meditative equipoise. I'm giving you the content of that last paragraph, that next to last paragraph from Khetsun Sangpo. On the Bodhisattva grounds from the 1st to the 10th ground, when you're directly realizing emptiness, you cannot see those phenomena whose emptiness you are directly perceiving. All you see is their emptiness. And it's not like all those phenomena are in a blender. You're just plain not seeing them. They're not in a blender. You don't see them. You see, Ngao Langden didn't say that all phenomena and their emptiness are like water and water. He said that the consciousness, the wisdom, the pristine wisdom, realizing emptiness, and emptiness are like water and water. All phenomena were left out of the metaphor. They're left out. They ain't nowhere. They're not in your ken. And even, they're not back there. They ain't nowhere. You can't even turn your head around and look at them. They're gone. That's what it's like when you die. They're gone. That's why if you're attached to them, you're scared shitless. Your body's gone, your friends are gone. Your house is gone? Maybe if, like in Vancouver now, the sky's all overcast with smoke, maybe it'd be relieved to leave it. My nice apartment with this great view. Oh, I'm so lucky to go. But it's such a great apartment. When I left when they carted me off to the ambulance in Virginia, actually I had no attachment at all to my beautiful house and all that. But interesting. But I don't know now. Mipam-gya-tsho uses the example at the end of the meditative equipoise of a learner directly realizing emptiness. And no one says that all those phenomena are somehow there or that you're realizing them in any way whatsoever. You're only realizing their emptiness. And even though you're realizing the emptinesses, in a sense, of all phenomena, you're not realizing their differences. You know, like this is this emptiness, that is that emptiness, and so forth. You're just realizing emptiness, an absence of inherent existence. Of all phenomena, you have to say yes. But are you realizing the emptiness of this, you know, the so-called difference? No. So he seems, Khetsun Sangpo seems to be wanting to retrieve the presence of the body of attributes, the truth body, so to speak, somehow. But there is no need to think or analyze about whether in that basis the marks and beauties and the pure land of a complete enjoyment of the body exist or not. Now, look at what Mipam-gyatsho says. I think Khetsun was saying the same thing there. At a time of non-fluctuation from the basis, non-fluctuation from, fine. It must be expressed that these, now I added in these, so it's in brackets, abide as the mere great emptiness and luminosity. Now this is Nyingma, so you've got to have luminosity too. Devoid of all limits. It's not somehow bounded in. And since that time, now there's no word for nothingness, nothing, in Tibetan. There's just a negative. There's no, but it does say arisen. There's no way I could translate it. I couldn't find any way except to say, nothing has arisen as the duality of Buddhas and sentient beings. Now, we've seen this enough times, so we're used to it. there's no duality of Buddhas and sentient beings. So there ain't no Buddhas and sentient beings.
Could I say something here? You just said the devoid of all limits. You're talking about as if out there, the boundary.
Well, look down at Khetsun Sangpo's commentary and see what he says about limits.
Because
I'll direct you to that.
Okay, thank you.
It's interesting. And since at that time nothing is... Now, no matter whether, that's a difficult one. That's my stab at a translation. No matter whether it is that pure Buddha qualities are undifferentiable. Now, I'm not quite sure what Mipam-gya-tsho is saying. In any case, there's no differentiation into this and that factor, due to which they are inconceivable. Now here's where we get meditative equipoise. Now we've talked about this now. A learner superior's meditative equipoise on primordial emptiness and luminosity. Now in Nyingma, you're going to get not just emptiness, but luminosity together. This has a lot of meaning for me. I mean, it's not just luminosity, you've got to have the emptiness of inherent existence also. And it's not just the emptiness of inherent existence, but also luminosity, in which dualistic appearances have vanished. Proliferations do not at all dwell there.